Coming up on this week's edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
We talk with NCBA's CEO about some of the critical issues facing beef producers. Plus, we'll show you how the Natural Resources Conservation Service can help you improve both your land and the environment for your cattle.
And now, NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
Hello and welcome to NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. I'm Kevin Ochsner. With much of 2024 already behind us, we thought it was a good time to take a look at where we stand with some of the critical issues that have faced the cattle industry over this past year. And joining us now is Colin Woodall, CEO of the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. Colin, thanks for joining us today.
Great to be with you, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
I want to start with traceability, hot topic. And several years ago, the industry came together, built a strategic plan. One of the four key objectives was to make traceability a reality. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing on that front.
Animal disease traceability is a hot topic within the industry. But before we get into that, I think it's important to realize that NCBA's policy makes it very clear that we are not pushing for a mandatory system. Regardless, we understand the benefits that an animal disease traceability system brings in the event of a foreign animal disease outbreak. Foreign animal disease would include things such as foot and mouth disease. And it's a matter of when, not if, we get foot and mouth disease again. And we know that animals that are enrolled in an animal disease traceability program will help us to locate the outbreak, to be able to isolate, contain that outbreak, prevent it from spreading, and then work on recovery. And recovery is key because we know that when we get to that point in our response, those animals that are identified are going to have a much easier time getting back into the channels of commerce than those animals that aren't. And that's an area we haven't spent a whole lot of time talking about. It's a pretty cheap insurance policy to ensure that you can get back into commerce. And the only way we can do this is by working with our partners, USDA, the state animal health officials, and also service providers such as IMI Global and US Cattle Trace.
You mentioned US Cattle Trace, and I know one of the key issues has been who's holding this data. Tell us more about US Cattle Trace and how folks can learn more about that producer-led organization.
US Cattle Trace came out of several pilot projects that were done in Florida, Texas, and in Kansas. And when those were done, everybody realized that there was something to this. Because one of the biggest questions that we have had throughout the discussion of traceability over several decades now is, how do we keep that information confidential? How do we ensure that it's just not put out there for everybody to gain access to? And we know in order to do that, USDA cannot maintain or house that data. It has to be in a private database. And that is the service that US Cattle Trace provides. They can hold that data, they can protect that data, and work with USDA in the event of an animal disease outbreak in providing only 4 points. That is the date, the time, the location, and that particular animal's number. That's all that USDA needs, and that's all that US Cattle Trace will be able to provide. So we encourage everybody to look at US Cattle Trace and consider being a part of that program. You can find out more at uscattletrace.org.
And they can only query that, right? In the event of a disease outbreak.
That is correct. So this is not just out of curiosity. There has to be an official animal disease outbreak or emergency declared, and that is when USDA would be able to work with US Cattle Trace in order to get that information.
Yeah, thanks for that clarification. Big election year. Colin, tell us what is at stake for our industry.
Everything's at stake because think about it. Here we are. We have an election where the White House, the House, and the Senate are all in very close races. And really, it's a jump ball, anybody's game. And we know that whoever wins, not just the presidential election, but also control of the House and Senate are going to have a huge impact on us as cattle producers, especially when you consider that at the end of 2025, we're going to start seeing the expiration of a lot of the great tax cuts and programs that we were able to include in the 2017 tax bill. So in order for us to protect ourselves as cattle producers and make sure that we don't see a return of the death tax at lower exemption levels, we're going to need a Washington, D.C. that's willing to recognize that and work with us. So that's why we're really engaged in watching these races closely.
That's why we appreciate all the boots on the ground you all have back there. Thank you for what you and your entire staff does on behalf of the U.S. cattle industry.
Thank you, Kevin.
Raising cattle is your top priority. Keeping you in business is ours. And one of the best ways you can support these efforts is by becoming a member of NCBA. Just call 866-233-3872 or you can visit the website ncba.org. Use the promo code C2C and you'll receive a voucher for a free 1-liter bottle of Cydectin Pour-On. Still ahead on Cattlemen to Cattlemen, we'll tell you about a unique partnership between the beef industry and baseball. That story when we return.
By installing Ritchie waterers, you save water while keeping it fresh and always available to your animals. You protect the land by keeping natural water clean and soil healthy. And you conserve power because they're energy efficient. We're committed to helping you create a prosperous, sustainable, and regenerative future because we know, like you know, that every saved drop matters. Ritchie, fresh water for life.
CattleCon's headed to San Antonio, February 4th through 6th, 2025, where farmers and ranchers gather to shape our industry's future. Remember, if you ain't at the table, you might just be on the menu. Check out the latest in ranching at the Texas-sized NCBA trade show. Network, learn, and grow your operation. Don't miss this chance to steer the cattle biz in San Antonio, where the Alamo spirit lives on. Visit convention.ncba.org to get registered. CattleCon 2025, where the beef industry meets.
My name is Nathan Martin from Centralia, Missouri, and I am the Federation of State Beef Councils. And my wife and I own and operate Martin Angus, a 200-head cow-calf operation. Volunteering to help manage or to direct the funds, I think that's something that is a role that I've embraced, and I think it's important in the beef industry that we're grassroots, we're managed and operated by the actual producers. We decide where the money goes and how it's spent, and debate those issues and try to do our best to use it wisely. Being part of the Federation, I think once you make that commitment, you realize the importance and how much impact you actually can have. So I think it's a real positive thing once people really understand what the Federation really does. The impact of the Federation allows us to have a much more of a national voice. Being from Missouri, I might know Missouri needs and how to promote and market things in Missouri, but there's lots of differences in our great country, and I think as we share together and pool our money and funds, we can make an impact in a much broader area of the country. That collaborative effort of working with the Federation is more important than ever because our funding is probably lesser than what it was years ago. With numbers, but I think it's really having a positive effect, and that checkoff we use it through the Federation gives us a much more national imprint. One of the checkoff funded programs that's had great value for Missouri is the Beef Quality Assurance Program, where it trains and continues to give professional development to the producers. I think it's vital as we continue down this road. Consumers are wanting to know that they can trust in the product, that it's safe and it's raised right, and I think those are all mechanisms that are positive for demand. The Federation continues to be vital today as the overall goal is to drive and improve demand for beef. It's a never-ending job. We have lots of competing forces that tell us otherwise, but we know that we have a safe, nutritious product, and we have to continue to promote that and educate the consumers. They are in the driver's seat of the industry, and we need to follow what their desires are. I just want to reassure the producers that in my experience of working with the Federation, that the staff is very dedicated, very committed, and focused to do their very best to drive demand. We can be proud of the staff we have, and I think they're doing an excellent job. We're all about doing the very best job we can, and the consumers hopefully understand and know that. But it's a great industry with great people, and God has given us the ability to raise cattle, and there's nothing better than that.
When summer rolls around, there's something special about hearing the crack of a bat against a baseball and the sizzle of beef on the grill. Now, these two popular summer pastimes are joining forces. With us now is Sarah Reese. She's the Senior Executive Director of Brand Marketing for the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. Sarah, tell us about this exciting new partnership between beef and baseball.
Yeah, I'd love to. So this year, Beef It's What's for Dinner, on behalf of the Beef Checkoff, partnered with Little League Baseball and Softball. And during that partnership, we are the official sponsor of the Perfect Home Plate. This sponsorship provides us with the opportunity to communicate with the players and their families about beef's nutritional benefits, as well as its convenience and versatility. And through this partnership, we are sharing that information digitally to these families, as well as during the event. We hosted a meal for the players at the Little League World Series, where they all came together to have a variety of beef meatballs and some fun games.
That's outstanding. And with more people eating at home, I love that tagline, Perfect Home Plate. So tell us, what are some of the longer term goals of this campaign?
The goals of the campaign are to educate the players and their families about beef's unmatched nutritional benefits, including its high quality protein and its 10 essential nutrients. We also want to showcase beef's convenience and versatility for these busy families and show them that beef can be a part of a quick and easy meal that's also delicious. And lastly, we want to introduce the next generation of consumers to Beef It's What's for Dinner.
Mm-hmm. So what makes the Little League such an ideal partner? Lots of different folks that you could have partnered with, lots of different sports. Why did you choose Little League?
Well, Little League is the largest world sports youth organization. They have approximately 2 million players across the United States, as well as in 80 other countries around the world. So this is a huge audience for us to be communicating with. We also love what Little League stands for. Little League believes that youth sports teaches these individuals about their communities, and it strengthens those communities and those families. And we love the sportsmanship, hard work, and dedication that these young athletes are showing throughout the year.
There's nothing more American than baseball. There's no doubt about that. So one last question.
Yeah.
You obviously champion the Beef It's What's for Dinner campaign. And I'm curious, Sarah, from your experience, what is it about that slogan and that campaign that has connected so well for so long with consumers?
Well, Beef It's What's for Dinner was launched in 1992, so that was just over 30 years ago, if you can believe that. It doesn't feel like it's been that long. But since then, consumers have learned to trust the brand. They know that they can go to the brand for information about recipes, beef's nutritional benefits, as well as how it's raised and grown. And throughout the years, there's one thing that always resonates. That question about what's for dinner is something that every consumer can relate to.
Right.
And Beef It's What's for Dinner provides the information to consumers not only for what's for dinner, but breakfast, lunch, and every meal in between, and can give consumers that inspiration to enjoy beef with their family and friends.
Well, as we were talking before the show, the record high beef prices demonstrate a level of demand, and I, as a beef producer, want to thank you for all you and your entire team do to drive demand for our great product. Thanks for coming to the show, Sarah.
Thank you.
Now, if you want to learn more about the great ways checkoff dollars are being used to increase beef demand, just visit drivingdemandforbeef.com or beefitswhatsfordinner.com. You'll also find great beef recipes that are sure to be a hit the next time you fire up the grill. Still to come on Cattlemen to Cattlemen, see how the Natural Resources Conservation Service is helping a Texas producer protect and improve her land. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
There's never a dull moment for the Nelsons. Fifth-generation Montana ranchers. Since 1868, they've been herding cattle, reeling in trout, and exploring Paradise Valley from their backyard. Here's to another 150 years of adventure. There's a story in every piece of land. Run with us on a John Deere Gator XUV and start telling yours.
Join the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. There are big benefits to being a member. You'll get industry news in the National Cattlemen, email updates in the NCBA Beef Bulletin, plus discounts just for NCBA members. Join by calling 866-233-3872 or online at ncba.org.
Every day, farmers and ranchers work to protect the grasslands under their care, by employing sustainable practices and managing their livestock effectively. However, they sometimes need additional support and resources to address key challenges. Here's a look at how the Natural Resources Conservation Service worked with a Texas producer to improve the overall health of her pastures.
When Julie Maddox first moved to this part of East Texas, she thought she'd found her dream home. But after a dairy reopened next door, what she'd once considered a beautiful oasis turned into a nightmare.
Lots of the wildlife disappeared. Never actually saw any snakes anymore. But what really changed after about 5 years was the amount of flies. Flies, just everywhere. So much so that I could no longer sit outside in the summertime. Well, I got a dilemma here. What am I going to do? And after 10 years of negotiating with that dairy farmer, I bought out that dairy and proclaimed to the world that I never, ever want to see a cow on my property again.
With the dairy and the cows gone, Julie decided to try to restore the native grasses on her land to benefit wildlife. She reached out to Texas Parks and Wildlife to enroll in their Pastures for Upland Birds program. But after a year or two, cool season annual grasses were dominating instead of the perennial native warm season grasses she planted.
I had Parks and Wildlife on my speed dial, and it's just not going the way it should be going. They finally came out again and said, "Julie, we think you need cows." Well, I don't know anything about cows. I thought about it for a while, and I had talked to some other people, and they said, "You need to contact the NRCS, they can help you."
I met her out here at her place and we walked around. She showed me everything. She had never had livestock before and wasn't too keen on that idea. So we talked about some other options that are available, mechanical or chemical and different things, and kind of came back around to the cattle, and she thought that might be the way she would want to do it.
John recommended bringing in NRCS grazing specialist Brandon Bing as Julie acquired her first cows. Brandon helped her create a grazing management plan which would allow the warm season grasses and forbs a chance to flourish.
She had a lot of unique goals for her property specifically, with this being a tallgrass prairie restoration project, and her goals more wildlife and ecology focused. This landscape was not only a prairie, but with the prairie comes all these species. And one of those tenant species was the bison that would come across, migrate across these areas and disturb them. They were the disturbance regime. And so by bringing cattle back to mimic, we're biomimicking what was here, hundreds of years ago, and how this system was formed and how it was integrated. The whole situation changed. It started to shift, and she started to achieve her goals.
The cows were the problem when not properly managed, but became the solution to the restoration. That very first year when we started rotational grazing, we saw areas that had been doing okay became pretty exceptional. We were starting to see grasses and forbs that we had never seen before.
These forbs, they provide an incredible forage for the cattle out here. They're utilizing plants that you traditionally don't see cattle utilizing because it's a healthy ecosystem. Her forage quality has spiraled into animal health. Their body condition is superior every time I come out here because of the diversity of the landscape. If we start with a healthy soil and we move to a healthy plant system, the cattle health goes up through the roof. And if our cattle are healthy, then our beef's going to be high quality.
I went from never wanting to see another cow on my property again to I really love cows.
Julie started out using temporary electric fence and a movable trough to rotate her cattle around the property, but John convinced her to install a more permanent water system.
Water is an important factor in a rotational grazing system, how you're going to move the cattle around. Every pasture has to have water. I told her she might consider our Environmental Quality Incentives Program, EQIP, and sign up for possibly some water troughs, pipeline to get water to those troughs from her existing wells.
If I bought 5 and bought one extra, 550-gallon concrete water tank, I cost shared with that. We did the pipe and the PVC pipe and laid all that out, and water is of course, no longer an issue. It really makes life a lot easier. And of course, that was all NRCS on that one.
NRCS also helped Julie fence off more areas of her property to help improve her grazing system.
We also financially assist with cross fencing to help facilitate that rotational grazing plan that we have in place. to be able to get that prescription of grazing out there that we've set in our plan and put it in motion. This helps them speed up their process to achieve their goals.
Julie's rotational grazing plan and infrastructure improvements helped restore the tallgrass prairie and made her land more resilient.
I'm actually able to be profitable through my grazing plan with the NRCS. I know there's a lot of folks out there that want to learn how to become land stewards, and you can make money on a small piece of land. I am making money with my cattle on 65 acres.
Reporting from Texas, I'm Brian Baxter for NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
Now, if you have conservation practices you'd like to put in place on your operation, you should start by visiting with your local NRCS office about the technical and financial assistance they may be able to provide. Go to the website nrcs.usda.gov to find an office near you. Still ahead, we'll introduce you to another cattle producer who's helping to direct the work of the Federation of State Beef Councils. We'll be right back.
Cattle producers across the country work hard to care for their animals and their land. The USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service is there to help. Find out how you can work with NRCS to develop a conservation plan for your operation. Find possible funding resources for implementing conservation practices, or get free expert advice on ways to improve your farm or ranch. Visit the website nrcs.usda.gov today.
Are you concerned about the impact government policies could have on your cattle business? One way to make your voice heard in Washington is by joining NCBA. When you join, you'll be part of the nation's oldest and largest national cattle industry organization that has a professional team working in Washington, D.C. on issues that matter to cattle-producing families nationwide. Don't stay on the sidelines. Make your voice heard by joining NCBA today at the website ncba.org.
Hi, my name's Dan Hannerhan. I'm a cow-calf producer from Cumming, Iowa, and I am the Federation of State Beef Councils. Our role with the Federation of State Beef Councils is volunteer. I think it's fantastic. It's a chance for producers to step up, lead, and decide the best use of that producer investment that the checkoff represents. I think what the Federation of State Beef Councils brings to each individual state beef council, number one, is a continuity of message. We're all saying the same thing. We're all trying to row the boat in the same direction. The other thing that the Federation of State Beef Councils really does is, I come from a cattle-heavy state. If we were to draw a swath right through the center of the country, I think about 2/3 of checkoff revenues generated in that swath, but it only represents about 15% of U.S. population. And so the Federation of State Beef Councils, one great value of it is it helps us get that investment from where the cattle are to where the consumers are. One of the things that I think the Federation provides that Iowa really gets to take advantage of is the Federation will do a dashboard survey. It takes a look at some of our consumption patterns in Iowa, but then it also polls consumers, and it helps ensure that we as a state, when we're out there messaging, we're messaging in a way that resonates with the consumer. To me, the value to producers of the Federation is that it puts producers in the position where they get to tell their own story. There's nobody telling it for you. You're not a character in the story someone else is telling. You're out front leading it yourself. And really the Federation, to me, is a vehicle that, number one, that communication's effective, that we're talking to the issues that are important to consumers, we're talking to them in a way they understand, but number two, that investment gets to where the consumers are. Anytime you talk about an organization, I think the tendency is to look at it as though it's a thing. And my experience when I think about the Federation of State Beef Councils, what I really think about is the people. Fellow producers who've got varied backgrounds, varied interests that they're passionate about, but also the staff that the Federation provides to help us meet our goals and objectives. I feel like the Federation of State Beef Councils is making a tremendous impact for beef producers. I think it's doing it in its programming. I think it's doing it in the research it does to make sure that those programs are effective and those programs are having the impact on consumers that they intend to. And I think it does it by making sure that we as state beef councils, we're making the most of our opportunity, that we're all working together effectively.
Each year, thousands of cattlemen and women from around the country come together for the premier event of the beef industry. It's not too early to start making plans to attend CattleCon on February 4th through the 6th in beautiful San Antonio, Texas. Registration is now open, and you can get all the details on how to attend at the website convention.ncba.org. Well, that wraps up this edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. Thanks so much for spending time with us. We'll see you again next week right here on RFD TV.